All right, thank you, Brian. And I think we're recording now. I want to welcome everyone, as Brian has already done, but once again, welcome to the show. And I'll be hosting Carl Stauffer. I'm on faculty here at the Center for Justice and Peacebuilding. And we want to welcome you to our webinar series. Some of you have been here before. For those who are here for the first time, welcome. And we hear there are many folks here from as far as France and Fiji and Mexico, as well as teachers, administrators, organization consultants, school psychologists, etc. And so we're looking forward to a very interesting conversation together. And we also want to welcome you to the CJP site and our webinars. This is the first and a segue into the next 4 to 5 months, which we'll say a little bit more about, where we'll be running a whole series. Each month, each webinar will be connected to the concept of schools and education and RJ's application in schools and education settings. And so we're delighted to have Dennis Gingrich from Waterloo here with us. And I'm gonna take some time to introduce his topic right now, and Dennis himself, who was here with us and a graduate of our program, and I know well, and it's fantastic to share this time with him. We're in for a treat. So Dennis is looking at restorative justice in schools, as you well know, and he puts the subtitle, "The Power to Heal and Educate." And I think that's partly that really sums up a lot of what we're after when we're looking at the particular approach that we're taking to restorative justice. Not just the technical skills, one more add-on skill set for school related folks, but this is more than that. This is a worldview. This is a lifestyle. This is a whole framework in which we build relationship. And so that's where the heal and the educate come together in, I think, some very exciting ways. There's been an explosion, and I don't think I need to tell you that, of the application of RJ in schools, but it's beyond just the classroom management, which is where it started. And then it moved into using restorative justice and its various practices as alternatives to school discipline processes, and all of these are still valid and being used. But beyond that, we're looking at what we call whole of schools change, whole of districts even, not just schools, but whole districts of schools. And what that means is we're taking a systems approach. And this is the exciting part about what I think is the new frontier for restorative justice in many ways, is beginning to see its application at a systems level. And the realization that RJ provides the systems framework, the working principles, values, and processes, so that we can make application of restorative justice at all levels, micro to macro. And especially, there's a new understanding of how this might affect policy and procedure, and then also partnership within the community. So we have tripartite alliances between schools, courts, and the community at large that are strengthening this restorative approach to education beyond just the school classroom. And that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. So let me say a little bit about Dennis. Dennis is from Kitchener, Ontario. He's been a guidance counselor for over 23 years, has worked with the Waterloo Catholic School Board since 1990. He's developed and taught numerous courses in mediation, peer mediation, and RJ processes. His student success consultant support has been very successful with in-risk grade 7 and 8 students and beyond. He's also instructed at Conrad Grebel University and provides restorative justice training for many different groups across the educational sector. And as we've said already, he is an alumni of the Eastern Mennonite University Center for Justice and Peacebuilding, and so it's a real pleasure to have Dennis here. I had Dennis as a student and so appreciated his wealth of wisdom and understanding on this subject matter. So I'm going to turn it over to Dennis and let him take it from here. And as Brian has already said, you can send in questions at any point along the way, but we'll be giving Dennis a period of time here of about a half hour to give us some input and some interaction, and then we'll move into a Q&A time. Dennis, over to you.
Thank you, Carl. Thanks for the warm introduction and the reminders of a good year spent down south. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, yeah. Good afternoon. I want to tell you a story that began many years ago in a certain place and with specific people who were influenced by their environment, their family traditions, their school experiences, and the many, many messages coming from societies in which they lived. Every story must be seen in context in which it occurred, and then it has the potential to teach others in different times and places. The part of the story that I'm about to share happened at a Catholic high school in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. Kitchener is part of the region of Waterloo, best known for 25 different varieties of Mennonites, the largest Oktoberfest celebration outside of Germany, and the ubiquitous blackberry. Okay, once upon a time it was ubiquitous, and that's a totally different story for a different time and place. I want to share this story and use it as an access point to more fully engage the conversation about RJ. Restorative justice as it impacts school environments and the people connected to these centers of learning. I believe, as the title of the webinar states, that RJ has a power to heal and to educate. After the story, I will draw some lessons from the experience, and I look forward to a lively debate and discussion from many, many different perspectives. To set the scene, it is important for you to know a few more details, especially for those of you not living in the Ontario context. Catholic schools here in Ontario are fully funded from the public purse, in spite of them being faith-based. At the secondary level, that means anyone from any faith tradition can attend a Catholic school. All of the boys involved in this story are Catholic. However, they come from a diverse set of cultural and family backgrounds. The story, as I will share with you, is my understanding and my interpretation of a real situation between 8 grade 12 boys that happened 4 years ago. The names of the boys have been changed, and I've kept them anglicized for my simplicity. One final detail that is critical to the story and is an awareness piece for everyone listening is about Alex. Alex is one of the key players in the story. And his mother died by suicide 3 months prior to the events that I'm about to share with you. And now the story that I've entitled, "He Should Just Go Kill Himself Like His Mother Did." He should just go kill himself like his mother did. The silence that erupted from Mitchell's contemptuous insult toward Alex, who fortunately was not present, was soon shattered with equal forcefulness by Mitchell's friends chastising him. "Don't be stupid, Mitchell. Mitchell, what are you saying? Shut up, Mitchell. You are such an idiot." Unknown to Mitchell's friends, Mitchell had just implicated them in an event that was heading very quickly into a downward spiral. Charles, connected to both Alex and Mitchell, doomed the course of the events even further by texting the insult to Alex's best friend, George. George very quickly pulled Alex from class and presented Mitchell's contemptuous insult to him. Rapidly, plans were made to exact justice and seek revenge before the sunset. Alex, along with his friends Charles and Justin, loaded themselves into George's truck and headed out to follow the bus that Mitchell was taking home. At the bus stop where Mitchell would disembark, Justin hopped on the bus to inform Mitchell that Justin should just smash his face in. Mitchell and his younger brother, who attended the same school, made their way off the bus, only to be surrounded by Alex and his group of friends, along with various and sundry onlookers. They were screaming and yelling threats, derogatory comments towards Mitchell and his brother. They were especially vocal, outlining the pain and suffering they should inflict on Mitchell. George was very magnanimous by offering Mitchell a choice. George could punch him in the face where they were standing, or they could go to the park so that Mitchell's little brother didn't see the justice being exacted on Big Brother. Mitchell declined George's offer, and he and his brother headed towards home. The group again stopped them, continuing to threaten them, but so far not touching them. A neighbor of Mitchell's started to intervene, and he was quickly shut down by the group. Mitchell's mother happened to drive by and noticed her children in the middle of the group. She jumped from her car, shrieking at everyone to leave her children alone. After much screeching and squawking from both sides, the group sauntered away, and Mitchell headed home with his mother and brother. Mitchell's mother then wanted her pound of flesh and attempted to achieve her goal by using the only thing she could think of, the authorities. She called the police, informed them of the assault on her sons, and demanded action. She then rounded up her whole family, husband, children, and dragged them to the school and confronted the principal. The two systems of power, the school and the police, leapt into action, initiating their best investigative protocol. Each followed policy, which meant the school could do nothing until the police had finished their investigation. The police took the lead, speaking with the boys about who did what to whom, drawing all the gory details out of the boys as best they could. They discovered that no crime was committed and closed the case. End of story. Well, not quite. Upon hearing the news, Mitchell's parents jumped back into action, demanding the school must do something. The school then investigates and determines the following. Number one, Mitchell's insult broke school rules. Number two, the other boys' threats broke school rules. 3, all of them should be suspended anywhere from 3 to 10 days. 4, after the suspensions, lessons would not have been learned and all would not go back to normal. The VP dealing with the situation informed me about it since I was head of guidance as well as Mitchell's guidance counselor. She did not know what to do and has heard me spout off enough to know that I would have an idea even if it was half-baked. In reality, she dropped it on my desk so that it was off of hers. She wanted these disenfranchised boys to learn and not get tossed into a system that would only make them angrier and be on the outside even more. In her best VP voice, she states, "Gingrich, we need to do a circle and get to the bottom of this." Well, it wasn't a very restorative approach, but I didn't care. Finally, an opportunity had arrived to demonstrate the value of RJ and, more importantly, to help these young men understand and take responsibility for their actions. I gathered all the info the VP had and began my own process. I spoke with each boy individually, listened to their story, and presented the idea of a circle. I knew I needed to include everyone that had heard the comment as well because they had valued and a necessary perspective. They were also impacted by the insult and provided friends for Mitchell. Very slowly, the relationship picture in all its complexity began to take shape for me. I also knew I needed to speak with the parents. Because of my conversations with the boys, I knew that Mitchell's mom and Alex's dad, although neighbors, did not get along. Okay, in reality, they hated each other. I spent a lot of time speaking with both parents, answering their questions, and attempting to allay their fears. Both finally agreed to have their child participate in Circle. Also, all of the boys, although reluctantly on some parts, agreed to be in Circle. I asked a female colleague to assist me in the Circle, to be my support, and to offer a female perspective. In all, 8 grade 12 boys and 2 adults gathered together in Circle. Throughout the first 2 circles, there was minimal movement. The boys stated their perspective on what happened on the infamous day of insults, as well as describing some of the backstory that brought them to that point. Edges of the story and previously hidden bits came to the surface. Mitchell identifying as LGBTQ. George texting Mitchell pretending to be an interested gay partner. Hateful insults being traded in the neighborhood. Put downs based on academic abilities and disabilities. There were no resounding breakthroughs. And yet, at the end of each circle, the boys agreed to come back together. During circle number 3, Mitchell tossed down an apology. That, well, maybe he shouldn't have said what he did. However, at the same time, he felt he needed to be apologized to for the insults and the language directed at him and his family. When this was denied and angrily rebuffed by several of the boys, Mitchell got pissed off, angrily withdrew his apology, and stormed out of the room. After Mitchell stormed out, the other boys were angry. They were frustrated, and they wanted even more revenge. My colleague motioned to me to follow Mitchell. She would handle the other boys. When I found Mitchell, he was furious. He was hurt, and he just wanted to go home. I invited him to talk if he felt like it. He left. After several days of struggling to find the next possible steps, Mitchell walked into my office and said, "So what do you want to talk about?" Again, I thought fabulous, and I didn't care who wanted to do the talking. He was there, and he was willing to engage me. I asked how he was feeling, and if he had any responses to the circle. He stayed, we chatted for a half an hour, and finally he said he would think about joining the circle again. This happened 3 times, and each time I added a little bit more to my request of him. The 3rd time, I wondered aloud about a mediation between Mitchell and Alex. At the same time as Mitchell was testing me with his visits, I was trying to track down Alex. He is habitually a non-attender, and I had looked everywhere. I finally contacted his buddy George and asked him to text Alex that I wanted to see him. I'm not above using any sort of social media if it helps out. The next day, George tells me he brought Alex to school, and I began looking for him at all the obvious places, except where I expected him, in his classroom. Alex's teacher finally called me and asked when I wanted to see Alex. Alex and I chatted, and he agreed to the mediation and left my office. Shortly afterwards, Mitchell shows up and says he'll do a mediation with Alex. The mediation occurred with my female colleague and I as the facilitators. Now, anyone who knows what they are doing in mediation and looked in on my process would have immediately taken away my certificate for mediation. I did not set the ground rules or any appropriate pieces of process. I just wanted the boys to talk, and I knew they also just wanted to talk. So we let them. We just began. And within 30 minutes, Alex and Mitchell had apologized to each other. The impetus that broke the ice was a friendship that they remembered they had had for years. The big dangling question coming out of that was, how do we present this to the other 6 boys who were so emotionally trapped by the last circle? Both boys agreed that the 2 of them would work it out. And so they turned to me and said, "So when's the next circle?" That 4th and last circle did happen, with lots of posturing by the other boys and many attempts to sabotage the outcomes of the mediation. Alex began by describing the agreement he and Mitchell had arrived at. Alex and Mitchell stood firm, and eventually the circle agreed that Mitchell should apologize to Alex's family. George and the others apologized to Mitchell for their comments online and in person, and that the group would end this part of the story. After the boys left the room, my colleague and I just sat in the glow of what we had witnessed in circle. Neither one of us could have envisioned the changes in attitudes we saw in the boys. We were also not prepared for the surprise yet to come. It arrived on my desk the next day. This is a letter and I will read it as it was written, not editing, not correcting for spelling or grammar. This is a letter that Alex had posited on that Mitchell had put on my desk. Dear Alex and family, I would like to open with a quote that I think fits the situation given the circumstances. Love is stronger than death, even though it can't stop death from happening. But no matter how hard death tries, it can't separate people from love. It can't take away our memories either. In the end, life is stronger than death. Looking back, I can't believe that I said what I said about you and your mother, considering she was basically another mom to me in the way she treated me when I used to go over to your house. It was stupid, and I had no right as a human being to say what I said, as I know what it feels like to lose somebody that is so close to you. What I said was not something that a friend, because even if we are not friends now, we were friends at one point. And despite what has happened, we might someday be friends again. It's still something you should not have to hear from anyone. Even if I explain my actions, it still doesn't justify what I said. As I know how you felt when what happened occurred, I too would feel the same way if somebody said something bad against my grandfather when he passed away. I hope you can forgive me for what I did and put this matter behind us somehow. I treasure our friendship, or what little we have left of our friendship, and all the things we've done. And hopefully, we may someday see eye to eye again as the friends we were before instead of the enemies we are now. If you have anything on your mind regarding this, please feel free to share it with me, as the only thing I can do as of now is hear how you and your beloved family are doing. I promise to listen to what you have to say before I even think of speaking. It's the best I could do. An old friend, Mitchell. I still have chills when I read that letter. This is from a boy who had been put down and had been given very little support or credit or anything. And he was able to reach through that because of a friendship, because of his memory. I want to draw some conclusions, some observations from that story. And then I hope to open the conversation from the many perspectives that are present at this webinar. I first want to go over some terminology, however. Terminology is important, and it can get us caught in a never-ending cycle of, is this really RJ? Is that RJ? What is this? For me, I have used restorative justice to include the restorative processes, restorative principles, and all other activities that are included in the basic RJ principles outlined by Howard Zehr in his little book of restorative justice. They are: restorative justice focuses on harm. Harms result in obligations. RJ promotes engagement and participation. Further along in the book, Howard states it another way, and I quote, "Restorative justice requires, at minimum, that we address victims' harms and needs, hold offenders accountable to put right those harms, and involve victims, offenders, and communities in the process," end quote. Why do I believe RJ belongs in schools and holds key ingredients that will make education as rich and impactful for all stakeholders? Well, Bell Hooks in her book, Teaching to Transgress, names what I believe is the vocation of being an educator. She states, "To teach in a manner that respects and cares for the souls of our students is essential if we aim to provide the necessary conditions all of that says education is all about relationships. And this is supported by the research. The number one factor over and over again in the research states it is the relationship between the teacher and the student. For me, RJ is not another tool to add to the educator's toolbox. And Carl outlined what I think is a really important process. RJ is a way of being in the world. It's a worldview. It's the manner of understanding and the method of participating in life. As educators, this worldview can drastically and positively impact how we do everything in schools. So 6 lessons from the circle. Number 1, RJ, I believe, transforms conflict. It doesn't focus any longer on what rules were broken. It's not about being against the school. It's about the harm that was done to a relationship, whether that's an individual or a community. In the traditional way of dealing with this story, these boys would have been suspended because they broke a rule. They went against the policies and the procedures that we have in our schools. And those policies and procedures are required. This is not going back to the 60s and love and peace and everything else. This is about looking at what is the core. We need policies. We need to work together and know what the game is like. But that game has to be formulated out of relationships, not out of did I break a rule. The harms that were done to both Alex and to Mitchell, and probably to some of the other boys, they weren't harms against the school. They were harms about the individual relationships. None of the things that I told you happened at the school between the boys. All of them were off-site. So as the school, we could have washed our hands and said, not our problem, but we didn't. And I give full credit to the administrators who said, you know what? We're an educational institution. We need to help these boys learn. Second thing RJ does, it's part of developing, maintaining, and repairing relationships. Creating an environment that's focused on relationships allows all members of the community to feel and to be safe. There was a huge chance of violence erupting back in the school. These boys, and I use that term by age, not by size. Everyone, or 7 of the 8 boys, would have been part of a great front line on a football team. They were large boys who very quickly could have jumped into violence. And some of them had participated in other violent acts in the community and back at the school, other situations. So by working at the relationships and repairing those relationships, we help provide a safer environment, not only for them, but for others in the school. This type of a supportive environment, for number 3, RJ helps people take responsibility for their actions, for their behaviors. The students and the staff learn how to and experience taking ownership for their actions and words. Ignoring what happened or suspending these boys, letting them walk away, it only would have created more anger. They did not have the tools at that point to be able to work at, oh, I did this and this caused something to happen. They could not have done that without the time and energy to help them discover what potential impact it had on others, on themselves, and then to be able to find, oh, there is another way through this. And that's the fourth point. RJ provides provides alternatives. It helps create this new understanding of what conflict is and not to be afraid of it. We all have conflict. We all run into difficulties, whether that's in our homes, in the community, at school, in our workplaces. Conflict is the reality. And too often we've been taught to be afraid of it. We need to move towards it. We need to be able to look at conflict and go, okay, this is something that's happening and I can deal with it. And I've got people to support me. The boys really didn't see something other that they could do. They were insulted, they were embarrassed, and they needed to take a stand. Their machismo kicked in and said, hey, my manhood has been insulted and I've got to get it back. And so they all took this posturing of, you're going to get it. I'm going to do you in. I'm better than you are. And they didn't have another way of going, wait a minute, that's just going to hurt us all. So the RJ provides an alternative for all of the stakeholders. Fifth, the alternative to RJ provides an alternative, I believe, to the commodification of education. I know here in Ontario, and I know in the US as well, that we're trying to produce workers. We need to educate these children so that they have a job, that they have a career. And as a guidance counselor, that's a huge part of my past 20 years of experience. But we're not creating workers. We're not creating citizens of the community. We're dealing with people. And when we can get down to that basic core level of helping young people learn about who they are and develop themselves as human beings, that's the education. That's getting at the soul that Bell Hooks talked about. RJ provides us an avenue to do that. Gives us, in some ways, the tools, but also the vision to be able to step forward and go, there are 30 young people in front of me, and I am educating them as young people, not as workers, not as a career or whatever, as people. That's the core. And the sixth and final point, our structures, our systems are part of the problem. We want to get rid of some of the violence that happens in schools. We need to, as the adults, look at how we have structured schools, how we have created an environment where we are setting kids up. Part of that is the retributive approach on which most schools have been based. I am in charge, I am the adult, you need to listen to me. I have the authority. Now, please don't hear me say that we can get rid of that. The worst thing we can do as the adults is to give up the authority, but we need to share that authority. We need to draw in the wisdom and the insight that young people have. And by young people, I'm referring to every child in all of our schools. This past week, I was fortunate enough to do another circle with a grade 4 and 5 class. During that circle, I sat in amazement at what those children knew was happening in their class, and then the solutions they had. It wasn't just, oh yeah, I get it that we're fooling around a lot. It was, I don't pay attention enough in class, and this is what I am going to do to make it different. That was voiced in circle, and the teacher was there, the principal was there a little bit, and it was amazing to me to see the wisdom coming out of these young people. We need to push our policies, our procedures, our structures into a way that engages young people in their education. We're not filling them up with wisdom or anything else. We're co-constructing, and we can use lots of lingo that is present in all the education. But the reality is we need to work with young people in all of this. Restorative justice, I believe, is a way of viewing the world, our education system, and how we are as people. It provides that opportunity for us to reach across the desk and maybe, in fact, move the desk aside and stand side by side with the young people for which we're working. There's a lot there. I'm going to stop there and bring Carl back in and let us open the conversation. What is it about RJ that can make a difference? Where are we going? What can we do?
Thank you, Dennis. That was fantastic, touching, and powerful. And I just want to actually read a comment here. The first one that came in said, "Wonderful story. It made me cry many times." I think you're getting at something that we're all feeling as we work within structures and with institutions, whether it's the criminal justice or the schools or government or other institutions, where they're failing us, and failing us in many ways. In some ways, like your last point, they're laced with conflict. And there's a lot of people falling through the cracks in those institutions, those social and public institutions. And so I think there's a definite feeling that there's such an important need here.
And just to comment on what was stated, Carl, and I'm glad that was one of the first comments. It is the emotions. That's what makes the connection with young people and with students. And when, as teachers, as educators, when we allow that to happen, when we allow that to reach in and touch the soul that we have and why we got into teaching. I remember hearing an input from another workshop, someone saying, you know, none of us got into teaching to order kids around and tell them what rules they had to follow. We got into teaching because we believed in what we could do as educators and to reach across and develop those relationships. So yeah, I'm glad that the emotion is there, because it is a powerful story. And if we've been in a classroom or anywhere ever, that emotion is there. And so it's rich. It can really make a difference for us.
That's great. I'm just gonna take them in order as they're coming in, but there's one here that we can do fairly quickly, I think, here to answer, and I'd like your input, and I can also give some. Someone has asked, are there evaluation and evidence in diverse settings across cultures and conflict affected countries that support or not support RJ? So I think there's someone looking for some actual either research reports or other evidence to read about how this is working and where it's working. Dennis, do you have any recommendations at that point?
As far as cross-cultural and that sort of thing, you've got much more experience on that, Carl. But I would say that yes, the evidence is beginning to pile up. This is there's research going on all over the world. Australia and New Zealand are some key places where some wonderful research is happening. England, Britain, that area, again, some more very, very strong research. I know of several different activities going on in different settings in various parts of Africa, which you have a much more stronger hold on, Carl. So yeah, there is a lot of evidence there. Can I draw on anything? Yeah, as far as recommending anything right off the top, I don't have anything. But Carl, for you and your experience.
Sure. So there's two parts to it. There, here in the States, there's been some incredible work being done in schools in the Oakland district in California, in the Bay Area, and they just came out with a very extensive evidence-based evaluation and report of their work. Fania Davis, who was on one of our webinar hosts, directs that program, and they're in multiple schools across the district there in Oakland. So you can contact us, and we can make sure you have the link for that, as well as there are other bits of research that are out there, evidence-based research around the Dialogue Project by Mark Umbright recently, well, within the last half dozen years or so, I think that's very useful. And so I'd encourage this one, Johan Zeb, I believe is the name. Feel free to contact us at the CJP here and the Zehr Institute, and we'll try to make sure you have some of those materials.
Right.
Here's another question for you. How does this work for bullying, where one bullied is afraid of being seen as tattling? In other words, how do we protect children while also working with RJ? This is coming from an elementary school teacher, Mary Bentfield, in a school where there's a big mix of street smart kids and pretty sheltered kids. Kids often come from completely different ways of relating. And she adds, and that is not saying that the sheltered kids are always innocent, by the way.
They're not. Trust me. Can it be used for bullying? Yes. But I'm cautious about that because it has to be handled in a way that does not victimize again and give even more power to the bully. Again, going back to terminology, the media and many of us use bullying as a term that deals with everything. Kids hitting each other suddenly becomes bullying. Well, it may not be bullying, it just might be a bad behavior. So bullying with the definition of, ongoing, sustained, power imbalance, that sort of thing, meant to harm, that's a very specific thing. Now, all of that being said, regardless of what the issue is, the preliminary work prior to bringing a bully and a victim together, there's huge work that must be done. And you caught a bit of that in the story. That story spanned 3 to 4 months with a lot of time, a lot of hours spent with me talking to individuals, getting their story, helping them understand what it is we actually were going to do in this circle, what the purpose was. That it wasn't going to be Gingrich sitting there as judge and jury. I was going to help a conversation happen. And so that preliminary work must happen. In elementary schools, it's again very powerful when you eventually get to circle or you get to a mediation or whatever the other structure is that you're going to use, for those children to have been prepared for what's going to come at them. And then it's a much healthier process where you don't get the re-victimization and the power has suddenly changed. So yes, it can be done, but it must be done cautiously and with a lot of work.
Great. Thank you. I'm looking at it. There's quite a few questions. Thank you. Keep bringing them in. Here's another question, and I hope, Dennis, you'll be able to pick up on this. Taking a successful RJ systems in a school system, the question is, how can we work out the difficult de-radicalization question across Canada? Does that make sense to you?
Okay, so if I understand it correctly, the de-radicalization is referring to the young people who are buying into the belief systems of an ISIS or things along that line. So they're moving from the West, from Canada, going to, not necessarily back, but going to Syria and other places, and beginning to buy into what I perceive as a very destructive process, and I think many of us do. I think that there is no magic wand or panacea that we can pull out and say RJ is going to do this. It's not the key to solving all these problems. However, what it provides is the viewpoint that I am developing a relationship and helping other people develop relationships, helping children develop relationships that may get at what their story is really all about. And people who are feeling that they need to go somewhere to buy into a system, to me, it's you know, in my growing up, the gang experience, not that I was ever in a gang, but having friends who dabbled in it because they got attention. And it was negative attention, and they probably knew that, but it was attention. As a school system, if we can reach out and develop a relationship, hear the child's story, that will help, that will go a long way. And structurally, as a system, if an RJ system is put in place in the schools, in the overall structure of the area, that will marginalize far fewer children. And it will help us to bring in those kids who feel, I've got no place to go. No one's at home. I'm not well liked. I'm looking for something, which we all are. We all want to be accepted, and we all want those relationships. So that I think is a little bit of what RJ can provide, especially around the change in the structure and policies.
Yeah, Dennis, I'll just add on there a little bit. I think we cannot say RJ is a panacea to all these things. It just isn't, as Dennis has already insinuated, a sort of magic wand. But I do think if we found these kinds of practices, restorative justice, happening more regularly and thoroughly in our schools, in our families, and in our communities, we would be capturing the real conversations, because that's what happens when these circles are authentic. Real conversations happen. People are talking about things that really, really hurt, dignity violations that really, really matter, the things that have marginalized them in various ways. And so what we're looking at is a process to contain some of that, and hopefully reintegrate people back into regular relationships and discussions where they can work out some of these frustrations and anger and other things that may drive them towards radical ideologies or radical action across the board. And I think we need to begin to talk about this across the board when there comes to violence in the schools and that sort of thing. But very, very useful question. I think there's some literature that I'd be happy to talk with anyone about too further from overseas, when we look at ex-combatant and child soldier and freedom fighters, whoever, coming back into a post-war setting, and how do we reintegrate them in. Now that's at a different place, but I think there's some interesting things. Dennis, you mentioned the gangs. I think we have some learning there if we look cross-disciplinary at some of the research around those that would be useful to research further.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Another question here, Dennis, more of a technical one right now. Dennis, is there a difference between mediation and RJ facilitation? Is there a time when mediation is not restorative justice? This is from Dorothy Vandering.
I shouldn't have invited Dorothy. Is there a time when it's not restorative justice? On the one hand, I think anything can be twisted. And I think there are lots of pieces out there that are called restorative justice and really don't follow the principles about harms and obligations and healing harms and that sort of thing. The mediation that I did with the two boys, not sure it was restorative justice. I think it was providing a setting for them to talk. And then the restorative part came when we got back in circle and they were in the environment that caused a lot of the harm. It's an interesting question that I'd want to think some more about. And Carl, I don't know if you have a response to that as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I certainly think there are forms of mediation that are not restorative. And I think we need to look at the basic things that we are very clear about in the difference in the processes, and that is that there's a power differential in restorative justice. The reason we keep the justice in there is there's been a violation, a harm, something's been taken from another in an imbalanced power equation, whereas mediation has become more of a technique at times, especially in the legal system, to bring disputants together who come equally to the table, who may have both fueled a kind of conflict or damaging process between them. And I think we need to be clear on how we're bringing folks around the table. And there are certainly some kinds of mediation, especially when you're looking at very technical or specific mediation on certain legal matters, that would not fall in the category of RJ. At the same time, I think part of our dilemma around that is that mediation has become more and more legalized. It's become more of a legislated process, and therefore becomes more technical. And there was a time when mediation was understood as sort of community mediation processes were sweeping the North American context and other contexts, where the idea was we're helping communities take back conflicts and deal with them in peaceful ways, transformative ways. And I think there was a lot closer affinity between restorative justice and mediation in those times.
And you mentioned a little bit, but one of the pieces that I think is missing from mediation that is present in RJ is the community aspect. Mediation, in my experience, has been very much, there's been a flashpoint, and then the key players in the flashpoint come together in mediation. Well, what we missed in that, and what gets picked up in a circle or in other RJ processes, is that the community has a role to play. They had a role to play in this situation happening and in resolving it. So that's one of the factors for RJ that I think is beyond mediation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to take us into two questions. Catherine Jenkins talks a little bit about her work. I've been consulting with a school once a week, meeting with a group of 7th grade girls. They are continually commenting on how much they need this kind of listening and space in their lives and just don't get it from other adults. They speak to how helpful it is for them to be able to speak about their difficulties and have the skills to work through their conflicts with each other. I'm working on developing peer mediators to pull the adults out of it from minor day-to-day conflicts. The peer mediators are excited about it, but I want to link this to someone else says, how would we, can we speak to restorative justice as a home-based practice, as a form of preliminary work? Dennis, I don't know if you want to comment a little bit on that, sort of moving out of the school to the family and some preventative discussion. Anything you'd like to comment on that?
I'll look at sort of both questions. I'll start with Catherine's question. I think peer mediators, I think helping students develop skills is a valuable asset to the schools. But I would caution the adults of moving away too far. That young people want adults who will listen. Many don't have it around them. The idea of, it takes a village. Well, in our Western culture, that village isn't around. Families move, or we become this individual nuclear family piece. And where are the aunts? Where are the uncles? Where are the friends? That sort of stuff. So peer mediation, absolutely. Peer support, absolutely. But adults need to stay involved. And having said that, in families, absolutely restorative justice as a way of communicating, as a way of helping our young people, helping our kids develop the strength to be able to face a conflict. Again, I think many of us have seen the helicopter parent idea of we swoop in and we protect our kids. Mm-hmm. Let the kids feel some pain, first of all, and secondly, help them deal with that pain and find processes that allow them to go, yeah, that really hurts, and I know what to do. or this is what I'm going to try. So it can be part of family meeting, doing it in circle and having that talking piece. Mom and dad, get ready, because if you follow the rules of the circle, you're going to have to listen to your kids. That's important. They want that. And they're going to listen to you too. So yeah, it is an important piece that can be a part of lots of settings. Using it in staff meetings, using it in other ways. It's a wonderful tool.
Dennis, I want to say the same. I mean, and I'm not saying this because we're sitting here. I think you use circles in your family, and I did too. I don't want to speak for you, but I did with our kids when they were younger, and it's an incredible process, and especially as you mentioned some of the popular literature out there. You've got a book recently, Have a New Child by Friday, or something to that effect, Have a New Kid by Friday. I think what we know from restorative justice is it's not formulaic, and it does take time and it takes energy, just as any authentic, genuine relationships do. But starting to build those blocks at a preliminary level is really important. It doesn't mean that our kids are going to go out and find restorative justice values everywhere, by no means, but they're going to have some other processes at their fingertips to conduct their immediate relationships and where they have influence as they leave the home.
Right. Another webinar you might want to do is bring our kids on and see what the impact is of doing restorative justice in families.
See if it always worked. I doubt it. But that's another webinar for another time.
I'm sure it did in your home.
No, only in yours, Dennis. Let's look at, there's a few technical questions around this story, which I think would be useful because people are getting their minds around the process. Lily Hebert Rempel says, had the mother or the father of those students not been open to the circle, would you have waited with meeting with the students?
This is where it gets, I think school settings have a unique piece. I technically could not have gone forward if one of the parents would have said, no, my kid is not going to be involved. Now, what I would have continued to do is work with the parent, again, develop that relationship about what is the fear. I'm dealing with a couple situations now at different schools where it's the parents, it's the adults that are putting up the roadblocks. The children want to get involved. But as an educator within my system, I need to respect the fact that I can't go forward with something that the parents are saying, no, you can't do that. Now, if I just could not have gotten one of the parents to agree, I would have thought seriously about going forward with the group of children that I had the go-ahead to involve. So it would have been a different circle. It would have had different purpose to it. And my reason for going ahead would have been, number one, to help the boys who were there to deal with it. Two, to provide an example of, see, this does work. The boys are able to talk, and I would move that back to the parent again in my conversation and say, you know, we have been talking, the circle has been going on, and I'd really, here's an important piece for you to understand. So school settings are one thing. Community settings are different. I legally don't need to have the permission of a parent to run a circle in a community setting, depending on what my status is or what role I am taking. It is important that we begin to think, okay, well, I couldn't get permission, so I can't do anything. I can with the people that are open to the circle. And it's amazing how what happens there begins to filter into the community and go, oh, those kids were involved, and what happened? You know, there's that interest that comes out.
Yeah. Another technical question here, just quickly, not technical, but helping us put the pieces together of how you actually work the system. Phil Kreider asks, how would you describe this young chap's relationship with authority before and after the circle experience?
Let's just say oil and water. Of the 8 boys, 5 of them were not engaged in school to any great degree. Of those 5, probably all 5 had been suspended numerous times. One of the boys, as we were doing circle, was waiting to hear whether he was going to spend time in jail or not for some extracurricular activities in his workplace. They did not value authority. Afterward, I would say that it changed a little bit, but I don't think it was life-changing for them in the sense of they're now more respectful or whatever. My last interaction with them, very, very pleasant. They would always greet me, or, you know, a number of them were, I had multiple relationships with them because as guidance counselor, as facilitator of the circle, that sort of thing. But in my conversations with them, I think it gave them a little bit of insight that at least 2 of the adults in the school were willing to listen to them. And again, I think that's a powerful message that restorative justice can provide to those kids who are looking for adults who might listen. Oh, well, he was willing to spend this time with these guys. Maybe I can talk to him, or maybe I can approach my colleague or whoever. So I think it shifts it a little bit. And for these guys, I think it shifted. I've lost touch with them. I don't even know if the one boy ended up in jail or not. He probably did.
Okay. Dennis, I'm going to keep, there's lots of good questions coming in here, and I know we're running against time. I figured this would happen with your story, which is fantastic. Let me just throw something else out here that I think is a critical discussion. Mario Marchand says, is it important trying to change the culture of violence in the school with a program before you have an RJ program? I'm afraid to put RJ program in a punishment culture without work on the climate first. Mario signs off as a mediator.
Yeah. And this is where I approach RJ as a worldview. I think if we approach it as something that influences all that we do in schools, not just as helping to deal with, you know, decreasing our numbers of suspensions or decreasing whatever, but as a way of, as a positive aspect of the school culture. I think, yeah, I guess it's a both and is how I would describe it. That you want to build the culture of the school, and from my perspective, from an RJ viewpoint, and that begins with a lot of groundwork, a lot of conversation, a lot of question and answer, and listening to the naysayers around this will never work, this is stupid, it takes too much time, all those things. We need that discussion to happen. But at the same time, if there's a mediator, if there's teachers who are doing this naturally, support them, allow them to happen, check in and hear those stories, allow those stories to be told at a staff meeting. You know what, I did a circle with my grade 3 class today. We were having some trouble, you know, boys were pulling hair and pushing people around, and this circle did this. Those settings can provide some of the impetus for the bigger change in the system, where you're working at it at a structural level, but you're also working at it on the classroom or the teacher or the individual relationship basis. I don't see it as part of the discipline or the punishment culture.
Yeah. So there's a few questions here, Dennis, too, about there's a comment regarding bullying again, back to bullying. And I would agree that in terms of applying RJ practices to the issue of bullying, people often try to jump into circle a little too soon. Mm-hmm. And it is important to take some preparatory steps, first with both parties before putting them together. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, this preparatory work can often be overlooked or completely ineffectively done due to the amount of time required. What would you suggest to help school staff utilize RJ effectively, as ineffective responses can cause our children to shut adults out even more and retaliate on their own?
Wow. I think it goes back to helping staff, administrators, all the adults, helping them understand what is it we're talking about with RJ. That's going to take time. And so we have to live in this in-between time of using some retributive processes, because the worst thing we can do as adults is not respond in any way. Students get that message very loud and clear and very fast. Oh, this adult isn't going to respond. And so we have to respond, but that may require us to do some retributive processes now as we're learning what it is that is involved in RJ. Time always comes up. It always comes up. And my comment back to that is, how much time do we spend trying to re-engage young people? How much time do we spend contacting parents and suspending kids and then having to deal with it over and over and over again because we've never gotten to what is the core issue for this child that she continues to lash out at people? Suspending her again is not going to help us understand that. So yes, it is time consuming, but so are relationships. That's what it's about. And so working collectively, coming up with those creative solutions. My experience is in high schools, and I've gotten a whole new education working in the elementary schools these last couple of years. In high schools, it's possible to use your colleague who is on a prep period or is next door to give you some time to maybe work with those two children. In the elementary schools, that's harder because there's less prep time. It's in shorter blocks, and there's more responsibilities in some ways that the teachers are on. But it's the creativity. The answers to some of these time questions are there with the people on the front line. Again, we need to provide the opportunity to hear them. Again, it's an organic process. There's no book that I can recommend. There's no one, size fits all sort of routine. It has to come out of the culture. The place and space is absolutely critical.
Thanks, Dennis. I'm going to shift a little bit here with Kathy Evans asking a question. What about the ways in which restorative justice education can be beneficial to teachers themselves? Can you speak to the ways you might work with teachers who themselves have experienced harm in the school system or the school setting?
A couple levels to that question. One is listening to teachers. More and more teachers are being asked to do what happened at home or what happened in the community, what happened in the religious setting in the past. And we're being asked to do a lot. So number one, just the listening process. I've done circles with a number of staff, different schools. And what comes out of every one of those circles is, wow, we got an opportunity to voice our concerns. And that's really important. I think structurally, using RJ through human resources, if the school system is large enough, if there's that sort of structure in place, using RJ within a school setting between colleagues that we're having difficulty with, inviting in the opportunity to have conversation in a way that provides a safe place and a structure that allows people to know that they're going to be heard. So building it into those policies, those procedures. Again, I think it's critical to help teachers get back to what I think is the core principle of RJ and the core principle of getting into teaching. And that is relationship building, helping young people build who they are. Well, to make that happen in a positive way, the adults have to understand what they're doing and why they got there, and to deal with some of the issues that we all bring into whatever the workplace is.
That's great, Dennis. Thank you. I want to move. There's been a little bit of question. I'm trying to put some questions together. One anonymous attendee talked about working specifically with girls in grades 5 to 7, and saying some of the issues there. And I don't think she was trying to be particularly, but she asked specifically, and so maybe you can add to that, Dennis, about any suggestions. Let me read the full statement here for you. Your case involved boys. At our school, much of the restorative work I'm involved with girls in grades 5 to 7. Something that keeps surfacing is the girls referring to past hurts, and they acknowledge how hard it is to let go of this baggage. Do you have any suggestions as how to help the girls move forward?
Yes, one of the things I would do is check in and individually hear from each of the girls. What are they telling the adults in their lives, and what are the adults telling them? I'm involved in a situation right now where one child is not able to move forward because of something that happened to him, and he was impacted quite severely. And yet, whenever we talk about it, I don't hear him talking. I hear the words from his parents. And it's the language that, a 11, 12-year-old boy does not have. It's coming from his parents. So I would check in and see what's being fed back to them from the adults in their lives. And then I would also begin in the circles. If you're using circle, I would keep coming back to, I keep hearing this story. You're feeling that this situation was difficult. What is it about that situation that keeps coming back to you? And then listening and asking for others from the circle, what has helped them move forward? So the girls would have ideas of, well, when this happened to me, this is what I did. And there may be some wisdom from the children that can help the other children move forward.
Dennis, there's 2 questions on social media. Do you, one saying that they're finding a lot of the things they're circling up about are texting, insults and offense. Do you believe that our students become more involved, as our students become more involved and are submerged in social media, real life relationships and skills required to maintain them are being traded off?
I think social media, those of us over 15 need to accept that it's here, and we're not going to get rid of it. what we haven't done at the front end is learn about it ourselves and help the young people know that whether I'm talking on a computer, I'm talking on a phone, or I'm talking in person, there are appropriate processes that need to happen. And it doesn't give me license to make insults through texting or through a computer that I would never think of doing in front of others. So I think it's a faster way of us discovering, oh, these young people need to learn some appropriate relationship skills, some skill development. I know in the Ontario setting that 10, 15 years ago, when there's a major change in our curriculum, a lot of those soft skills were pushed out, and time for those soft skills were pushed out. And so we lost those opportunities to help kids learn how to relate to each other, and we need to bring them back. We need to, as educators, find ways of helping young people know that whether I'm talking on a phone or in person, there are some appropriate ways of me interacting. And one way to do that is to draw out from the child what it has been like for them when they've been the target of social media, or when they haven't been listened to, whether that's by adults or other people, helping them connect the fact that what hurts them hurts other people as well. And that, again, it's that relationship building, it's that taking that time. And I'm not sure that gets at the core of that question. She may want to come back with more on that. I don't know.
Sure. Thank you, Dennis. Here's another question from Elaine Young. You probably heard about the events at Dalhousie, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, School of Dentistry recently. There was a huge backlash to the RJ from the public. What is your take on those events and why people objected so strongly to RJ?
It's Dalhousie University on the east coast of Canada. I was livid with the coverage that was done by the media. I know a number of the players out there and the hard work that they did trying to get the story out about what it is that RJ is looking at. I think for anyone listening, if you get a chance to go on to the Dalhousie website and look at the letter written by the 29 people involved in RJ, you can't help but feel, okay, this was powerful. All different aspects of this experience. The RJ piece was the piece that moved things forward. Why is it? People want blood. Our culture is built on somebody did something wrong, there is a victim, there is an offender, one is wrong, one is right. And we have to move away from that. In all of our settings, it is going to destroy us as a culture if we are not willing to look at there are other ways than blaming one person and supporting another one as a victim. Over and over again, there are stories of people who have stood against the justice system as we understand it, and said, no, I am not going to ask for blood. I want something different. It helps the victim, it helps the perpetrator, and it helps society as a whole in the prevention of a lot of things. I wish the media would pick up on what has now happened with RJ at Dalhousie in the same way that they picked up on, the vehemence against these 12 men. And what they did was absolutely brutal. And yet, you know, that's the part that got the media play. The work that the women did, the work behind the scenes, the support, that does not get the airtime. That is something that we need to change through this whole, you know, restorative justice field. Is we need to get it out there and help people understand it.
Yeah. I think there's a tremendous amount of misunderstanding about what RJ is, especially if it's splashed across the media in a way that's ineffective. And also, as you said, we have a narrative, a dominant narrative in our society that seems to imagine that the way we would do it or handle it in a punitive approach or criminal justice approach would be satisfying. And I think what we're discovering, and that's why we're all in this conversation, is that it's not. But many people and the media is not willing to to re-narrativize that, to change that narrative publicly and in society.
Yeah.
Another question here, quickly, Dennis. In the province of Quebec, there is a vision to have less punishment in schools, which is good. Instead of that, we have been using a psychological or a psychologist approach, work with the offender and the victim separately. How can we change that? Or is there a way to move forward? I'm assuming the question is asking, how can we bring more of this RJ into that sort of situation?
I think some of that work needs to be done. Again, we're becoming more and more aware of the mental health issues that are impacting our children, part of our schools. So there is, again, a need for being aware of what is the story, the full story that this child is coming with. By doing it separately, it's somewhat of looking at it from a deficit perspective that, okay, there's a problem with this child. He doesn't have the skills, or something's wrong, or she needs to learn how to do this. And that, again, keeps us trapped in this narrative around there's something that we have to correct. If we look at it from what are the strengths that this child has, and some of those strengths are the people around them, the relationships, bringing all of that together, because whatever the fight was about, whatever the activity was, the misbehavior, there's a story there. It didn't happen just because I felt like poking my neighbor in the arm and punching them. Something happened to me before. Something happened between us, or whatever. So I think it's respecting the need for the psychological aspect, the mental health piece, and bringing in the idea of community, the relationship piece. Again, I keep coming back to that this is about relationships. That's where that change is going to happen. Wonderful that there's less, punitive and less pushing kids away, but we need to build in that groundwork of the relationship. How do we do that?
Thanks, Dennis. We're just about ready to close up. Believe it or not, we have about 5 minutes left. One other question that I just want to put out there, again, leading on to the systems approach. Someone's asking, and how can lawmakers, institutions such as police, judiciary, and governments, and this person includes the UN, can be engaged in RJ practices? Dennis, you want to take on any of those sectors?
Well, I will, but I'm going to use an example that's close to your heart, Carl, and it's what you guys have done in Harrisonburg with finally, after the many years that Carl and Howard and others in that community have been doing RJ, the police, the court system. I was going to say Crown, but you're not part of the British colony anymore. So you have developed a process where portions of of actions that happen that are criminal get dealt with in a restorative justice manner. And there are many settings. That's the current one that I saw the announcements last week, and I think it's a wonderful model. Again, if we look at communities where there's struggle, it's because of the divides. It's because of we don't like this part, or we don't understand this aspect. Maybe there's immigrants coming in, and why are all these immigrants coming into our community? And we need to work at ways of bringing those players to the table and having those discussions. Again, it's relationship building. The UN, that's above my pay grade. Should it be? Absolutely. And I know there's wonderful things happening. I know some of my colleagues that I graduated with are working in settings with the UN or have interactions with them, and they're using restorative principles. They're working at the community level to make some of these, long-standing conflicts get chipped away by restorative justice. So you might want to explain a little bit more, Carl. I don't know if there's time.
Well, I'm gonna just make two quick comments again to this question. Thank you, an important question. If you're not aware already, there has been entire legislation put into place in New Zealand for their juvenile offender system to work through a restorative process called family group conferencing. That's been in place since 1989, and you can find some more information on that. There is a restorative justice protocol in the UN, but it's under the justice sector reform arena. So it's primarily looking at how do countries look at applying restorative justice in criminal justice matters. Some of us believe it could be stretched further into transitional justice and war to peace reconstruction, but that's another discussion for another time. Thank you for everyone who's asked some really great questions, and thank you, Dennis, for your input. And then I'm including two comments that are really important, and that is, how could we use our virtual space here in even more restorative justice manner and have a circle where more and more voices could be heard? And we're going to keep working at that and trying to figure out what that would look like and how that would feel. But thank you. We're hearing you. And I'm going to turn it over now to Jordan, who's going to take us into the last bit of our time here. Jordan, go ahead and close us out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As I'm getting my screen set up here, my name is Jordan Michelson, and I am a current graduate student at the Center for Justice and Peacebuilding. And I'm also Carl's graduate assistant here at the Zehr Institute for Restorative Justice. So first of all, I want to thank Dennis and Carl for a wonderful conversation. It's really, really great to hear from a CJP grad about the work that he's doing out in the field. I'm going to take us through a couple of announcements that we have coming up. There was a pretty big turnout for today's webinar and a lot of people interested in this RJ and education. And we have a series coming up this spring into the summer about restorative justice and education. The first webinar will be on April 22nd. Here's a quick description. We don't have the title up yet, but this webinar will lay the groundwork for our new RJ and Education series that will take place over the next upcoming months. The guest speaker will be Anita Wadwa, who is the RJ coordinator at the Academy of Choice in Houston, Texas, and the founder of the RJ Collaborative of Houston. She will be joined by some of her students in the RJ program at the Academy of Choice. And the series will be facilitated by Kathy Evans, who's a professor of education here at EMU. Kathy's been instrumental in the development of a new RJ in Education graduate certificate, which will be available in the Masters of Education program here at EMU. And we look forward to that webinar and for the upcoming series. So stay tuned to get more details as they become available. We will have them on our website. And also, I'd like to point out that this webinar has been recorded, and it will also be available on the website in addition to our previous webinars if you wanted to get caught up on those. A little bit more about EMU. The Zehr Institute for Restorative Justice is within Eastern Mennonite University, which is located in Harrisonburg, Virginia. EMU has undergraduate programs, master's programs, and various graduate programs. And you can check them out on the website. I'm going to talk about a couple of those programs coming up as they relate specifically to RJ and some exciting opportunities for more training and courses. First of which would be the Summer Peacebuilding Institute, taking place this May and June. 3 courses of interest for those who are interested in learning more about restorative justice or wanting to brush up on skills or dive deeper into this material. The first of which will be Restorative Justice, the Promise, the Challenge. This will be a great primer on the topics of what is restorative justice, comparing to other justice systems, and some more case studies and analysis of how it's used and where and by whom. We'll also have a course on developing restorative organizations and carrying over restorative practices into our organizations and what exactly that looks like. And finally, there will be a course on justice in transition, taking a look at restorative and indigenous applications in post-war context, and that will be taught by Carl Stauffer. Another item of interest would be the STAR trainings. This is the Strategies for Trauma Awareness and Resilience, which is a great way for practitioners to enter their work from a trauma-informed perspective. A lot of the stories that were shared here and a lot of the questions, there's a trauma element that can certainly be addressed or practitioners can be made aware of. STAR Level 1 is great for learning frameworks for dealing with trauma as a practitioner and recognizing trauma with the people that you're working with. STAR Level 2 is designed for those who want to take the STAR materials and become trainers to use that training and hold trainings of their own. Those courses are available online. We currently have a wait list for the next STAR Level 2, but please go ahead and check out both STAR Level 1 or STAR Level 2 at the emu.edu/CJP/STAR. As I mentioned, I'm a master's student at the MA in Conflict Transformation. This is a wonderful program. It's really grounded in practice, strong emphasis in practice skills, analysis, theory, working with a lot of the frameworks that we've been talking about, but then also, a strong emphasis on practicing those skills. Also a strong emphasis on nonviolent and restorative responses to conflict, focuses on restorative justice, psychosocial trauma, strategic peace building, community development. You can find out more information on our website, emu.edu/CJP/grad. Also, really neat and designed for those who maybe don't have time right now to pursue a full master's program or just want to focus in on restorative justice. CJP does offer a graduate certificate in restorative justice, which allows people who are working professionals to continue working and then also brush up on skills or dive deeper into this material. I'm thinking of one course that we have at the master's that was also part of this certificate program that was done online. So kind of in a similar format to this, there was some of us in a classroom and some of us joining from kind of a distance. So that could be really well suited if you're looking to get more information and more studies. Stay tuned and look for more opportunities to join us in that sort of a way. I think that's it for our housekeeping and announcements coming up. We will post more information on the webinars coming up on our website, the Zehr Institute, and we will have, as I said, this recording up and available and for you to review. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Carl, and thank you again, Dennis, for sharing with us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jordan, and thank you, Dennis. And we're ready. That's going to be the full for the webinar today. And thank you for being with us. And please come back and keep checking our website for the other webinars in the future. Thank you and have a good day.